In step 4, we'll enable editing for our streams, fix any network errors, and then validate the topology. We'll begin with trace error 1, which will use the split to split the stream segment at the junction and then save our edits. Next, we'll fix trace error 2 by using edit vertices, reversing the direction of the upstream flow segment, and save the edits. And last, we'll validate our entire extent and be sure to save our edits one last time. Back in ArcGIS Pro, I want to explore our trace errors. So I'm going to click on the map ribbon, the bookmarks drop down, and select trace error 1. That zooms in on our first error, and I'm going to use the select tool to examine this intersection. It looks like the segment flows downstream to the junction. If I zoom in, it looks like it's snapped to the junction, so that seems fine to me. Let me select this segment. Okay, there I can see my problem because the resources are flowing down the segment and past the junction. And the endpoint needs to occur at that junction so that then all the resources can come together and then continue to flow downstream. So I need to split that segment, and I'll do that in an edit session. So I'm going to click on the edit ribbon. And then in the features group, click on modify and locate in the divide section the split tool and open the split tool. And then I want to split at that junction. And I'd like it to snap. It's not quite snapping. What's going on? I'm going to use the snapping with endpoints enabled and then split at the endpoint. There we go. Go ahead and split the selected segment. There, and that split it. And I can confirm that it worked by clearing my selection and then selecting one segment and then the other. All right, it looks like all three segments now end at the junction. Seems like it's fixed. We'll test it in just a second. Go ahead and clear my selection and save my edits. Now I want to examine the other errors. So I'm going to go to the map ribbon, click on the bookmarks dropdown, and select trace error 2. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. You can see it's flowing downhill, downhill, downhill. It's flowing downhill. Oh, I can see that that is flowing upstream. So that is the problem right there. And I need to flip that segment so it flows in the correct direction. So I'm going to go ahead and select the segment. And then on the edit ribbon, in the tools gallery, I'm going to click on edit vertices. And the segment ends with the red vertex, so it's flowing in the wrong direction, and I can flip it by hovering over the segment, right-clicking, and select reverse direction. And you'll see that the red vertex flips sides so that now it's flowing in the correct direction. And I can confirm that it flows in the correct direction by finishing my sketch, clearing my selection, saving my edits, and then on the trace network ribbon, click display flow direction, and you'll see that the symbology flips and now it's flowing in the correct direction. All right, so it seems like I have fixed both of my errors. I'm going to go ahead and close the modify features pane. And then I want to zoom to the extent of my streams. Now I want to validate my topology because I've made edits to my underlying geometry. Save my edits. When you validate, it opens the edit session. And then go ahead and save my ArcGIS Pro project. In our final step, we'll run local and cloud-based trace analyses. We'll start by rerunning our upstream trace to confirm that we fixed the flow, and we'll clear all trace locations. Then we'll switch from our desktop geoprocessing to our ArcGIS Online geoprocessing. First, we'll run the ArcGIS Online Geoanalytics Server trace downstream cloud-based tool and examine the results. And then we'll run the ArcGIS Online Geoanalytics Server watershed cloud-based tool and examine the results. Back in ArcGIS Pro, let's rerun our upstream trace to make sure we resolved our errors. So I'm going to activate the trace network. Click on the trace elements dropdown and select starting points and add a starting point at our sink or the pour point for our network. Go ahead and close the trace elements tool, click on the trace upstream, and then in the trace geoprocessing tool, I'm going to accept all the defaults and click run. And this selects all of the segments upstream of our pour point, including the two segments that weren't selected earlier. So we have fixed the flow in our trace network. Go ahead and close the trace geoprocessing tool, activate the map ribbon and clear our selection. Back on the trace network ribbon, I want to clear all my trace elements. In addition to running desktop-based geoprocessing tools, we can also run cloud-based ones as well. So I'm going to click on the analysis ribbon under geoprocessing, click on ready to use tools dropdown and select trace downstream under the hydrology section. In the trace downstream geoprocess, I need to set my input points, and I don't have any ready to go. So I'm going to interactively add some by clicking on the pencil that opens up an edit session. This adds a trace downstream point feature class to my geodatabase and adds it as a feature layer to my contents pane. And so I'm going to add a point at the source. Stream networks flow from the source to the sink, so I want to add it at the very top of my network, and I'm going to set the resolution to finest and click run. And what's happening is ArcGIS Pro Desktop is sending both the point data and settings to ArcGIS Online that's running the geoprocessing trace, and then sending the results back to my desktop. And if I zoom in on the results, you can see that it looks a little bit different than my original network. It follows it pretty well, but it's not as high a resolution as my network because this is a global data set, not a local data set that we're using in ArcGIS Online. But there are some advantages to this. And if I enable my base map and zoom out to the extents of my trace line, I can see that it traced all the way down to the coast. So the Sunset Valley streams dumped into the Colorado River, which dumped into the Gulf of Mexico at Matagorda Bay. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the layers for this solution and reset my map view. Return to the analysis ribbon, click on the ready to use tools dropdown, and this time under hydrology, I'm going to select watershed. Again, I'm going to interactively add a point, and I want to add a point at the sink of my network. So I'm going to click the pencil and then add a point at the sink or at the pour point. Finish my sketch, accept all my defaults except for the resolution. I'm going to switch that to finest and then click run. And again, it's sending the parameters and data to ArcGIS Online, which is running the geoprocess on their geoanalytics server, and then returning the results back to my ArcGIS Pro desktop. All right, and there's the watershed polygon. And if I select the watershed layer and go to the feature layer ribbon and set the transparency, I can see the underlying stream network as well as the base map. So that's a pretty amazing tool that I can do that without actually having a local stream network set up. And if I zoom in and look at my results here, I can see that the southern half of my stream network is all encompassed within that watershed, but the northern half probably has its own watershed that flow independently into the Colorado River. All right, go ahead and save your ArcGIS Pro project. This completes the demonstration.